By now I believe that everyone knows that they need to be tracking something within their app, but what exactly? If you don't ask the right questions first, you're going to end up with a mountain of data in a shiny dashboard that offers you zero insight and helps you to make zero decisions as a result. What I want to talk to you about today is those questions that we think that you should be asking in order to help you to make data-driven decisions about your product and your marketing. So point number one, why are you measuring anything in the first place? And that's the most important context that we have to keep in mind. So at Mubaloo, we believe that there is no success without adoption. So no matter what the objectives of the application are, if you can't achieve adoption, you won't achieve any results. It's that simple. So what does adoption mean? Adoption means awareness, it means engagement, and it means retention. And depending on what your application does, it may also mean monetization as well. Today, I'm not going to focus on monetization, but I am going to talk about the other three. We think that in order to achieve adoption, you need to understand what is working and what is not working within your application and be able to make decisions about your product and your marketing as a result. So prototyping and user testing are fantastic. They'll help to mitigate the risk of developing a product or even developing features that don't support your value proposition, but quantitative, real-time data is invaluable. Okay, so point number two. So now that we have some context about why we're even tracking anything in the first place, now we need to focus on those questions specifically that we need to answer about our product in order to achieve adoption. So I'm going to give you 3 golden questions thanks to Chamath Palihapitiya from Facebook, who gave a presentation called Putting Facebook on the Path to 1 billion users. So he came up with 3 concepts that I believe are a very effective way to think about what you need to track within your application and what questions you need to answer. So I'm going to give you these 3 and then we'll go and break them down. So the first one is, how do you get people in the front door? The second one is, how do you get people to an aha moment as quickly as possible? And the third one is, how do you deliver core product value as often as possible to your users? So the first one I'm going to talk about is how do you get people in the front door? What does that mean? If no one knows about your application, no one's going to download it. So ideally, what you want to be able to measure is what is that string of actions that led someone to download your app. So linear attribution versus last touch attribution, which would just tell you what was that step right before someone did download your app. This will help you to understand the true impact of your marketing, whatever that is, whatever you're doing, and your media spend. So that you can abandon, concentrate, innovate with specific channels, with specific approaches to acquisition, with specific creative that you're using, and with your budget based on actual data. So that's number one. So the second one is all about how do you get users to an aha moment within your application as quickly as possible. And why does this matter? This matters because the average application loses 80% of users within 7 days, which is an astounding statistic. So you need to be able to identify the specific behaviors that differentiate, on the one hand, a long-term retained user from a user that churns in your application and never comes back. And if you can't understand that, you're going to have a very difficult time overcoming the retention challenge and ultimately achieving adoption. So what you want to be able to measure is the significance of specific behaviors within your app with respect to long-term retention. And that's called behavioral cohorting analysis. So you want to know the point at which the user begins to perceive the value in your product and they have that light bulb moment, that aha moment that goes off and they decide to continue using it. For Facebook, which is the now famous example, the milestone was 7 friends in 10 days. For Slack, it was 2,000 messages exchanged between a team. You may already know what that is for your product, you may not. If you don't, find out. Why? So you can optimize the first-time user experience that you offer to your users, and that you can optimize your automated mobile marketing campaigns to drive the right behaviors quickly, and especially in the first 7, 10, and 30 days. So the third one is how do we deliver core product value as often as possible? What you need to understand is where people actually find value in your product and then focus on enriching that experience as much as possible. People often quote DAU and MAU, so daily active users and monthly active users, as a measure of engagement, and it's quite misleading. Not just for other people, but for yourself in terms of being able to understand whether you are succeeding with your application. So a short example, imagine if you had 25,000 daily active users for your application. You have no way of knowing whether those are the same 25,000 users as you had yesterday, and if they're not, then you could potentially have a significant retention problem. So that's the first issue. Second one, DAU won't tell you that only 10% of those users are actually using the core feature or the core value proposition of your application, and that the whole purpose of your app is actually completely unclear to the majority of users. The third point at which it fails is that DAU also won't tell you what features of your product are actually bringing users back, or what they're actually using your app for. So what you want to track instead is a more meaningful type of DAU, which ensures that engagement that you measure is synonymous with the core value proposition that you provide, or at least what you believe you provide, so that you can validate that. And what can you do with this insight? Well, you can prioritize your development backlog to focus on enriching the core experience rather than introducing extraneous features that will not impact retention in the long term, which is what you care about. So, this helps you to avoid that one more feature syndrome that so many products suffer from. Let's review what I'm recommending. So, the first point that we made was there is no success without adoption. Adoption being awareness, engagement, and retention. The second point I made is that we need to focus on those questions that you need to answer in order to achieve adoption. And they were, number one, how do we get users in the front door? How do we get users to an aha moment as quickly as possible? And number three, how do we provide core product value to our users as often as possible? So your analytics and your mobile marketing solution should help you to answer those questions as quickly as possible so you can make decisions about your product and marketing and actually do something about it. So remember, measure and react. A car doesn't have one pedal, it has two, and your tool set should have the same. I'd like to say thank you to Andy Carville, who created the Mobile Growth Stack, as well as Amplitude, AppBoy, and Andrew Chen, all of which share really good thought leadership on their blogs, and which I recommend that you check out.